This program was brought to you by AJ Longo and Associates.
Good evening, I'm Joe Carbonetta, and from the Pasadena Media Center, this is Arroyo Live. Our program is produced by Pasadena Media to help enrich our community through informative and meaningful conversation. Remember, you can share your comments with us anytime at arroyolive@pasadenamedia.org. Tonight, we bring you part 2 of our special series on Black History Month and Pasadena's Black History Parade. Here now is our guest host, Pixie Boyden.
Welcome everyone to another Arroyo Live. I am Pixie Boyden. I am your guest host for this session tonight. And we have two of our most awesome guests. I'd like for them to introduce themselves. Let's start with Gary. Gary, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Gary L. Moody. I am part of the Black History Parade Committee. I've been working with Pixie and this documentary for 2 seasons. Born and raised in Pasadena. I went to all the schools, got my master's degree from the University of Phoenix. I am married for 41 years and have 2 children, Hassan and Aisha.
Awesome, thank you. Kenny, could you introduce?
Yes, I am Kenny James. I work for the City of Pasadena in the Parks, Recreation and Community Services Department. I am the event manager for the Black History Parade and Festival. I am born and raised in the city of Pasadena, and I also went to all of the schools. And I am alumni of that great high school, PHS. So I just had to let that be known.
Okay.
And I'm going to take off my hosting hat for 1 second. I am Pixie Boyden. I am currently a member, obviously, of this community, also gone to Pasadena High Schools, live in Pasadena, have been in Pasadena for quite some time, and have been working with the Black History Parade committee for the last couple of years, trying to do some really good work for our community. Putting back on my hosting hat, I kind of wanted to get a little bit of, starting off around what activities that we're typically doing this year. Okay, so we had to pivot for COVID again. And so we're doing things just a little bit differently. And so I would love to kind of, make sure that the community knows what activities we are planning as a committee. And maybe if you happen to be aware of a few others that are happening or have happened in the month of February that you could share.
I'll go ahead and touch base on the ones that the committee has been planning for this year. Again, we would have been working on our 40th parade and festival. And as you said, we have pivoted. So there are several events that we did plan for this time. One is supporting Black businesses. So we have been working with Hood Liberations. They have worked with us to be able to establish a list of Black businesses that you can support in the Pasadena and Altadena area. We have those listed on our website at www.cityofpasadena, Parks and Rec. And then we also allow vendors to be able to upload their information on a regular basis, so that way we can keep that list updated. So the other thing that we're focusing on are our people, places, and events. And I'm quite sure we'll touch on that a little bit more because Pixie and Gary both are part of that, and they've done an outstanding job with that. So I don't want to steal their thunder. I'll allow them to speak on that. The other thing that we're doing is our movie. We have a movie that's scheduled for February 26th. It will be at Area H in front of the Rose Bowl. That event will go from 5 to 9 p.m. We have a live band who will be there, Love from Above. If you guys have not heard them, please come out and hear them. They do an awesome job with R&B, blues, and jazz. We also have a couple of food trucks that will come out as well. And then we are working with Huntington Hospital to do some screening and give out free COVID testing as well. Those are in-home kits that people can take with them. We'll also be partnering with Day One. They will be part of the celebration. They will provide little gift baskets to the first 100 people that attend the event. So make sure you go on and register and make sure you are in that first crowd because you will receive a little gift basket for that. And I'm just trying to see if I forgot anything else
That's
regarding.
a lot of stuff that's happening. I mean, my goodness, we pivoted and then did a whole bunch more.
Yes, we did. And again, it's really just making sure that we are still able to have activities for the community to be able to participate in, because that's one of the most important things, is making sure that we keep the community engaged with activities and stuff that support our heritage and our culture.
Absolutely. Now, I know there's been a lot of other activities that have happened or are happening within the context of Black History Month. And I know we may not necessarily be directly involved or putting them on per se by right, but we are kind of aware of a few other activities that have been happening or has happened. Gary, I know that you mentioned one activity, I think it was on the 2nd, February 2nd, that happened over at Perry's Joint.
I was not able to participate in that, but there was an event that was attended. I don't know too much other than what I've seen on Facebook, what happened at Perry's. But one thing I know about Perry is very active in the community doing various things. He has a scholarship as well as other fundraisers that he does. He's a very, very active brother. And I know that those that were in attendance, unfortunately, I didn't know about it till the last minute.
Right.
But I do know that whatever Perry does, he does first class. And I know those in attendance really appreciated the fact that he was able to provide his deli to support Black History Month.
And our heritage, right, and the community as a whole. I know it was on February 2nd, and people were able to kick off the month with something festive, and be able to hear from people invested in the community and our youth and our resources as well. I know that there's a documentary that's coming up.
I know this one by Michael Zinzin that was released. I know Pasadena Black Pages has put that out, so the credit goes to Dennis and his team for what they put together to showcase some of the history of Pasadena from one of our civil rights activists.
That's right.
Again, yeah.
I believe it's playing on Boston Court on Mentor. I know that that's going to be a very interesting, awesome documentary for us to kind of hone in on and get a little bit more knowledge around things that have happened within the context of the past to the present and how it has shaped our presence currently today. I just wanted to kind of touch a little bit on, just ask the question, how did you get involved with participating in the Black History Parade?
Well, for me, I actually got involved as a participant. Like I said, I'm born and raised here in Pasadena.
Weren't we all?
Yeah, just to hang out, over at Ed Robinson Park and Jackie Robinson Center. So it was, just a great experience to be able to look at people march, in the middle of the street and the parade, to be able to showcase, drill teams, drum lines, the schools. Then you had the fraternities that showed up and participated in the festival. You had plenty of food and games and activities and music for kids to participate. So with that being said, I ended up becoming, a city employee, and I've been with the city for 28 years now. And part of my responsibilities is to ensure that event, continues. I was a supporter and in a support role for all of the past event coordinators and managers who participated. And recently, the last 5 years, I was appointed to be the representative for our department as the manager of the event.
Wow.
And from there, I've just been leading and taking part in and making sure that the community is engaged.
Well, that's cool, Kenny. I go all the way back to when it was Black History Week. And when we used to have our Black History Queen, way back. And I also remember was through a group otherwise known as the Pasadena Commission on Human Needs and Opportunities Program, otherwise known as the PCH&O. And through those groups, with the guy, Earl Raines was one of them, and then from the Black Student Union over at Pasadena City College, you picked up with people like Roy Hayes, who also was very pivotal in the continuing and expanding the Black History Week, which became Black History Month, which eventually became a Black History Festival, and participated on a lot of different levels. One particular group that I was a part of that was very instrumental in a lot of the Black History Month events was the Black Male Forum.
Mhm.
With the Black Male Forum, you had almost anybody and everybody. I was just watching Fat Tuesdays on Netflix, you know, and we had like Fat Fridays at the Black Male Forum, and everybody came through the Black Male Forum. But the key was that the event that it ended up evolving as the Black History Festival and Parade just came out of a community awareness, community concern, and the fact that we wanted to do things that were positive in retrospect. And, you know, a lot of the things that were going on with the gangs and things, this was one event that I don't care if you're a Blood, Crip, or whatever your last name was, when you came to the festival, it was neutral ground and everybody had a great time. So Black History Festival and Black History Parade, it's one of the probably the most iconic events that the Black community has ever had. And we really feel real good when we're able to do something like this. So my involvement has come down many stages. And I just remember, and most importantly, that the various churches and I'm a Kappa, so I see my brothers walking down there with their sticks and stuff and their canes, but on the other hand, the young folks, the parade involving the bands and the schools, you know, it just made it a stellar event for the city of Pasadena where we can showcase our people.
Yeah, so it really does have a strong importance for us to really think about how we're uplifting our culture within the context of the city, and making sure that we're staying engaged. As I heard you say, Kenny, you know, keeping people engaged, keeping people in tuned with what's happening and connected with each other, which is really important. And so I kind of picked that up a little bit, Gary, as you were talking about how important it is for us to really be participating in that way. I too, Kenny, was a participant and then back seat driving, supporting the Black History Parade, not necessarily as front seat as I have been over the last couple of years, but it's been actually a whole lot of fun. And, you know, since you mentioned it, Gary, around how this parade has really had an imprint and impact on the community as a whole, Kenny, I'd like to hear your thoughts about what you think about how this parade has helped uplift the perspective of the African-American population within Pasadena and their pride.
Well, I think first thing, you look at the energy that you get and that you see when you go to the parade. You know, it's like a sense of calmness that happens when people are able to come together and experience, you know, the rhythm and the music and the different culture things that we have as a people. You know, it just brings harmony, you know, when we are together. And to be able to experience that and to be a part of producing something like that, you know, has a big impact on the community. Because again, what you're doing is you're going through the different stages of generations that are able to see, you know, the history of what happened when we look at, you know, our elders that are here and that have a tremendous impact. But then you also look at our youth, and that has to do with our future. Because it's funny when you see the youth are in, and then today it's like, hey, I was that youth in there. Now I'm that youth that's leading and directing, and it's going to be the same thing. Some of our youth that are participating now, they're going to be sitting in the same seats that we're sitting in now, saying, hey, we're able to continue this tradition to be able to show people, you know, the impacts and being able to pass that leadership on. So that's huge as well, you know, ensuring that the leadership stays within our community and they understand the impact that we have based on what we do.
You know, as we're thinking about this, you know, really kind of getting, and you kind of, both of you touched upon this and several of these individuals already, around those that really helped shape the beginning components of the Black History Parade. I know, Gary, you mentioned a few people that were impactful in trying to ensure that this legacy continued. And as you are watching the baton really being passed from decade to decade, as this has gone, and you must have a sense of pride and joy to see how it's evolved.
Absolutely. My benchmark is when I became president of Pasadena branch of NAACP, and I was given the title Community Grand Marshal. Okay, and it was, it was a big thing, to be the Grand Marshal of any level at the Black History Parade, and it's just some of the icons of our community when they rolled down the street. It was iconic, man. To do the wave.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's an event. It's and we can say it's ours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
It is.
Any thoughts about some of those leaders, those early legacy leaders who've kind of helped shape this?
Yeah, I know Gary had already mentioned one, Roy Hayes, but you had members like Ted Bates, Tori McCoy, Carolyn, Christine Harris, Ralph Poole.
Oh yes!
Oh my goodness!
Rodney Wallace, Horace Wormley. All those people had a big impact in what's happening today, because they were able to carry that baton on, and also provide that guidance and direction for us to continue.
When we look at the community, there are people that are part of our churches as well. So you could look at the Metropolitan with they're involved in Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at various peoples through the police department with, it's talking with Rodney, but at the same level, all of our Black policemen and our Black firemen went by the fire station on the corner of is that Claremont and
Claremont and Farrell's. Mm-hmm.
And just all the people that part the whole idea of a coming together of the community, whether you were a part of the city or whether you're a part of a private organization, and the fact that young folks that are in school are those that are in the elementary schools. The cowgirls used to stomp down there. You used to stomp down there on Farrell. And then when you come to see people like radio DJ icon with Roland Bynum, you see Roland, man, that really would light it up, to see that there's an icon of that nature over there judging. And you mentioned Tori McCoy, oh my goodness, and the whole idea of those over at Jackie Robinson Center, Brother Washington, was that Gene Washington?
Yeah, Gene Washington.
Yeah, Gene Washington that was over there, and then you look at Ted, my goodness, Ted Bates.
Yeah, Ted Bates.
The master of the domino, okay?
There have been so many people.
Yeah, there were just so many, Dorothy Ford,
Betty Ford,
all the folks that were there, whether you were participating, walking down Fair Oaks, or you're on the sideline giving a whoop whoop to the people.
Right. And it has changed. It has shaped itself over the years. And so, it must be a daunting kind of legacy to kind of pick up a little bit, Kenny, because on some level, you're kind of picking up the baton and kind of moving it forward down the line, prepping the next generation to pick it up and move it forward down the line. It's got to be an awesome responsibility to have to do.
Yeah, it is. But, it really goes to the fabric of our community, because it's nothing that can be done by myself, whoever's in this position. It definitely comes from the members of the community that come together and provide their input, wisdom, knowledge, and ideas. It's probably one of the biggest challenges you face, is trying to figure out how do you do something different, because you're doing a parade and a festival. But what is it that you do a little bit different that will continue to have a spark and will continue to engage people and want them to participate?
I do have the pleasure of serving as one of the commentators during the parade, along with my awesome co-hosts, Roland Bynum and Deborah Smile Lady as well. And so even though I know she's in Africa enjoying herself at this time, but, we have really looking at all of the acts that come down, looking at all the entries that, come through. It is always so awesome to see the diversity between the kinds of groups that come down. It isn't as traditional as one might think. It's just a marching band or a drum corps or a drill team or anything like that. We have had people come from as far as, I think San Diego one time.
Yeah.
And that was a really good team, as a matter of fact. I said, oh, wow.
Buffalo Soldiers.
Yes, a lot of iconic people spend time in the parade as well. And so, and we've had a lot of diversity. We've had our motorcycle clubs, we've had our sororities, our fraternities, we've had our Masons, our Eastern Stars. We've had them all participate within the context, the churches, the youth groups, the community groups, knowing that Pasadena is like the mecca of nonprofits in the universe, I think, on some level. So we have such a richness when it comes to our community. It makes you start thinking back around, okay, what were some of the more key highlights for you? Like, could you think of one of the more prominent Black history parade moments that you could really remember? You're like, that's so defining, that really changed our parade, for the better.
For the parade, probably one of the most defining moments that we had was actually when we had the motorcycle club lead us in the parade. That was something that actually changed. That was the first time it had happened in the history. People were a little nervous and felt uncomfortable about it.
I don't know why.
but it was good. I mean, it was a great experience. And after that, we realized, hey, okay, it works. And that was something. I think the other thing was when we had the HBCU schools come out as part of the festival and encourage the kids to, look at those schools. I think those were two things for me that kind of helped shape, my and it's really, as you said, the diversity and getting exposure for others.
At the very beginning, when it starts up over on Ventura, my experiences was the lineup, and at one point we had over 130 participants. So I was there's me and Dale Yarborough. He was running like a rabbit up and down trying to make sure everything was going great. And then you had the lowriders that everybody, the year that we had everybody in a lowrider car, Snoop Dogg would be very proud of us,
I was thinking of that.
Because, so I had the opportunity to ride with my brother from New Guiding Light. He had a 1962 with lifts front and back, and I was riding with Robert Jones, okay? And just the iconic show of all the cars. And then one year they had all the Thunderbirds, the old Thunderbirds, okay? So I would think, the different types of styles, automobiles, motorcycles. And the motorcycles, oh man, you could hear the motorcycles from Ventura all the way down the mountain. When they came by, it was iconic. So I would think, in retrospect, man, I can't point out just one exactly, but I can say that certain components of it drove the Black History Parade that year. Okay.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think, when you both of you are discussing the diversity of the entries within the parade in itself, getting an opportunity for our community to think or look or see certain groups differently, maybe, so maybe they may have had a different impression around a motorcycle club or a classic car club structure, and then to be able to see them differently. Now almost to the point of expectation that our dignitaries are riding in the classics.
Yeah, Anthony Portantino, Judy Chu.
Almost definitely.
You see Judy Chu on the back of a lowrider car, man. And,
I think it's awesome.
Anthony Portantino, he was in it. Chris Holden, they were in it. They were really enjoying it. The mayor, goodness gracious.
It's been so many different things, and I think that when we finally had the opportunity to actually cut off one of the streets, to have the festival components there was really kind of monumental, because I don't think we had actually done it really quite that way before. And it wasn't taboo per se, but it wasn't commonplace for our parade to have a street, kind of blocked off for festival. But what really comes to mind are, some of the local food trucks that, are that year, the first year that we did that, and it was so impactful. There was a line that was so long that we just couldn't. I never did get any of the food, but because the lines were so long, but it was such an awesome opportunity for our local entrepreneurs to be able to step in and support the community in that way, and the community to support them, kind of bringing that visibility. Yeah. We had more bigger, micro entrepreneurs who were there at tables, and lots of different diversity of wares and arts and crafts and, paintings even. And so I thought it was a very awesome experience for people to be able to have in that way, so that they're able to see that kind of information. It's awesome that we're having these kind of moments. And since we were talking about the parade, I kind of want to shift just ever so slightly to ask that same question, but with a different tense, right? So is there kind of a prominent Pasadena Black history moment that sticks out to you within your context, within your genre, that you can think of? A Pasadena Black history moment.
Well, let me say the coming together of the two gangs. And there was a year or so when there were a lot of people that were separated, whether or not you were an Altadena Crip or a Pasadena Blood. But the key is that year when I guess it would probably be somewhere in the 90s. early 90s, that it was a plea made out to both gangs that this was neutral ground. And for that day, I mean, it had to be close to 10,000 people in and around the festival. Not one problem. Matter of fact, the police department, they stood on for a minute, but the next thing you know, they was lining up to get some food from the Catfish Man like anybody else. Okay. And it just led to the fact that we can come together, and that everybody wants to celebrate and have a good experience, and that didn't make any difference where you were from at that day, on that festival, on that Black History Parade and Festival. We were one Pasadena. So those early 90s, I would say for me, was special, and a nice time to have a real truce, and the fact that all families were just one big Black history family.
And, I think that that's really important for us to, kind of keep in mind, as we are adjusting. And even last year, when we had to pivot for the first time in this way, I mean, everyone had to pivot. It was COVID. Nobody could have expected it. It wasn't on our to-do list ever. And we pivoted to have an event, albeit not the parade and festival, but a still family connected, oriented sort of experience down at the Rose Bowl with the movie and the live band. And if I remember correctly, there was a gospel rapper, R&B artist. He was doing some gospel rap originally. I was like, oh, he's really great. So it was kind of a little bit for everyone, plus the food trucks. And even though we had to, sort of remain in our cars to watch the movie on some level, I know this year might look a little bit different, but not too much different, considering you got to hear it, right, from the speakers, but still, you're not confined to the car. It really showed me personally how we will endure. Not that we as a people won't endure, but for sure how we will go ahead and find those sugar packets in our pockets and make a little more lemonade out of something that may not necessarily taste so good. We are definitely known for doing that. And thinking along that, train of thought, is there, something you could speak about as it relates to, what the African American presence was like in the beginning of, when the city was starting out and sort of coming up, so to speak, not necessarily in the earliest days, because none of us were here in the 1800s or even early 1900s in that way, but understanding what you do know about the Pasadena beginnings and what the African American experience might have been like. Could you share a little bit about, what your thoughts are about that and how it has led us to this point?
My family just celebrated 100 years of Pasadena. We came here in 1921. And the Pasadena that I grew up in when I was a kid is definitely not the Pasadena that I see now. Our community, when I was growing up in the 1950s, was a totally immersed community that was led by our churches and led by our pastors. We experienced downtown in a different way in regards to institutional and some abject racism, and having the one church down there, Friendship, that stayed down there on Dayton and DeLacy, was a place also what you would call holy ground. Now, First AME eventually moved to its current place, but for the time that it was, going back to the 1950s when I was growing up, the grandparents that I had that came here from Augusta, Georgia, my great grandparents came here. Black Pasadena was basically on one end of town. It was called the South End. And in the South End, you find a lot of the businesses. I mean, we were entrepreneurs from Jump Street because it was very hard to work for anybody else. So we had to make do for ourselves and created some great businesses that still now exist, and the documentary that we're shooting out in a week or so is going to let the public know just exactly a thriving Black community, that was here along with the inception of the Crown and Key. We talk about the Prince family, the McAdoos, the McAfees, Mr. Woods, the Lundys, and the Mims, and all of those families that some are still here. You look at the struggles that we had just to have a good day, and to create a community that was it wasn't, and I'll tell you, it was not a poor community. It was a working community. And what was also the fact that when we started to emerge, and Black Power did not start in the 1960s around here. Black Power started right after World War II. Okay. When we started moving in and not only creating our businesses, but had thriving real estate companies that were starting to sell homes to some of us that were able to move above Orange Grove, the Black Doctors Row on Salida Road, all the entrepreneurs and that lived and worked, you're talking about the Duncans, you're talking about the Jacksons on, I call the iconic streets of Howard between Kenneth Way and Forest, okay?
Right.
When you talk about the Northwest, I mean, Jackie Robinson was on Pepper Street,
Right.
And when they were on Pepper Street as a young family, there were not really that many Black families surround them. So when we are able to get our first touch of downtown with our first Black city director, Hank Wilfong, that's when we were starting to be recognized by those downtown that there is Black power in Pasadena. And it was starting to become more and more evident in the community, as well as be able to create a movement that was able to have a stellar high school that ended up over in the east side of Pasadena, known as Pasadena High School Bulldogs. Okay, that was a tough fight. So Pasadena is a place where a lot of us that came from the South that emerged in the south end of Pasadena that created a power base and a power structure that some of our parents and our grandparents were able to build a foundation so that we are able to exist as we do today.
You know, I grew up here in, you know, the late 70s, early 80s and 90s. And just to look at the impact of the community then versus now, again, the churches were strong. And I remember the congregations were large, and the fellowship that you used to have within your church, but the fellowship with other churches as well. And that was kind of, you know, what kind of shaped us. But it was that, and then even looking at, you know, the outlets that we had to go to. You know, you talk about the Robinson Park, you talk about the Boys and Girls Club up there with Larry Cole, you know, who took a lot of us in, you know, and helped and gave us, you know, that leadership that we're looking at. You know, people like, you know, Prentice Dietrich, you know, there's another one that helped to shape that. And then, you know, there were coaches that helped us from a young age, you know, Tip being one. Some people may not know Tip, but Tip had impacted a whole lot of people's lives.
What's Tip's real name? What's his name?
Tip's real name is Lavelle Sanders.
Thank you.
Yes.
I know all them Sanders. Good people.
Yeah, but they had a tremendous impact in impacting lives as well. So it was just a community. And then when you looked at, you know, Northwest Pasadena in general, I mean, it was like everywhere you turned, you know, there were a lot, you know, of us at the different schools. And when you look at today, you don't have that, you know, for various reasons, you know, there's still, you know, a small percentage of Pasadena here that are leaders and movers and shakers. But again, to look at, you know, how we are not as strong in numbers, I should say, as we were, you know, in the past. And it's just, you know, for various reasons, you know.
Right.
You know, you hit a hot spot though, Kenny. When you said the boys club. How many young boys went through that boys club of Villa? Okay.
Yeah.
A strong little league, Chuck Bradford.
Exactly. Yes.
I mean, so many of us were mentored by those that were over at the boys club, and Chuck Bradford. I mean,
Chuck Bradford. Yes.
Yeah, it was an alternative to the YMCA. Okay.
And very pivotal, right?
Yes, very pivotal. It only costs $2 to be a member of the Boys Club, where you have to spend $100 to be a member of the YMCA. They also had an alternative to going to the camps that the YMCA did with Camp Norris at the Boys Club. We also had a little league that was powerful, the West Pasadena Little League. Oh, goodness gracious! You come over there, man, the stands were packed. Okay, I mean, so our kids, you know, had a lot of. I was one of them. You know, we just had a place to go, and they had a full machine shop. Okay, where you can go in there and learn how to make stuff in the machine shop. We had a swimming pool over at the Boys Club. Where if you couldn't go to Brookside, heck, we going over to the Boys Club.
That's right.
You know, so
there's a lot of different things that have really helped shape us. And, you know, you both have touched on how the youth are being impacted by our presence as a whole. And some might actually say that, you know, there's a need for getting more African Americans, especially youth, involved in government. And so, and the city's ongoings in that way. I'm not sure. What are your thoughts about that? Is that something you subscribe to? And if it is, how do you think we go about doing such a thing?
Well, I definitely subscribe to getting youth active in everything, because again, they need to understand the process and how things work. And the earlier you can engage them, for them to understand, you know, the city government, as well as the political process and the education system, I think the stronger you make them. So it's about awareness, giving them knowledge and helping them to be better. So, you know, part of that is really been able to continue to engage them and been able to have people in places that represent them and look like them. So that's huge, you know, you know, city, police, all that. Yeah, you got to have that. And I think that's what helps to strengthen the community when they are able to see, you know, those leaders in that role, and those leaders come back and give to them and help guide and provide that direction, for them.
Makes sense.
Some of our police officers back then, the Black officers especially, were also in the community all the time, and I really respect Rodney Wallace, because he was more of a human being than he was just a police officer. And when you go back to people like, Ralph Riddle, they were community people. Matter of fact, most people knew Ralph Riddle more so as the owner of the Cinema 21 than he was a police officer, And city government in Pasadena is very unique because it's a city manager system. Pasadena has always been run like a corporation, more so than a city council driven. That's why for a long time, the only paid person sitting around the council bench was the city manager. Everybody else was volunteered, and got a small stipend. So here in Pasadena, it'd be very, very important for our kids to know and understand a structure that is corporate driven, because it is more relative to when they step out of learning city government in Pasadena into the world, because Pasadena's small little, at the time, was 88,000 people, now up to 140,000 people. This one, the little 140,000 people's city affects a whole world. And at least on one day, there's going to be 40 to 50 million people watching our Tournament of Roses parade.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're both right, especially around, being in spaces and having people who look like you so that you have something to sort of subscribe to. And now we have Cheryl Moody, standing in place for the first time ever for African-American females. So as other African-American females are looking about that, this becomes another thing to look towards, like, oh, look, I see myself in that role. I see myself in those places and spaces. And I know all of that is so important, so definitely important. I know that we've been talking a little bit about the community and the parade and all of the wonderful things, including, which we didn't talk about for the parade, was when Tommy the Clown came that year. Oh my God, that was a big, huge thing for some younger folks. That was huge. And my kids at the time were like, oh my God, it's Tommy the Clown. And I'm thinking this is really important. Kids are really important. But it kind of helps us, start looking at how we pass the baton, right? So how do we set up the next generation to kind of pass that baton? I'm kind of interested, looking at both of you in this way. Can you think what one thing that you're committing yourself to do to help pass that baton to the next generation, since we're in that conversation?
For me, one is be looking at, youth to get involved in our committee and bringing them in and have them, be able to either focus on some form of parade entries or something at the festival, so that they can kind of get that exposure of what it's like to organize and plan. But then also to be able to invite people to be a part of it. Looking at that, and then even maybe have them follow along with what you guys are doing and people, places, and events, so they can understand the history of how that works as well. And then looking at how do you market and outreach that, to the community to be able to get support. But it's definitely engaging them up front and having them a part of the process.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Equality amongst our own folks. Right. Sometimes we have a problem of division, based on certain concepts. So I think the young folks these days are definitely social media driven, and they need to really understand that's only a two-dimensional engine. You still have to go face to face in order to touch someone. If you can't touch them, then there's something missing, and we're still small enough but big enough to engage our young folks. I've always talked about being a mentor, and we have certain groups at the various high schools, all the way down to some of our elementary schools. There are some of us that are over at those schools that would love to have some help, and at the same level, engage our kids. The Mentoring Partnership Youth Development Program over at John Muir High School is a stellar program that has been going on now for over, I guess, almost over 20 years, just about. And Tecumseh Shackelford has had 100% of all of his participants in MPYD graduate and go on to college. But the other part to that is the fact that when they go away, will they come back? Okay.
Right.
So we have to have something that's relative for them so that when they do come back, it's inclusive and it's not exclusive,
Right.
And so it's good to be able to engage them, follow them, stay with them when they do graduate from high school, but at the same time, offer them an opportunity to come back to probably one of the most enriched as well as richest community of its size throughout the United States of America. But the key is they have to understand that it was this community, our Black folks, our grandfathers and grandmothers that helped build this since the beginning and the inception of this. So they really need to know how their history is, parallels the history of Pasadena, and our success has been Pasadena's success.
Absolutely. And I completely know what you're talking about. I remember when it was Lunch with the Future.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking with Mario Leonard asked me to do it. This is back in the day. Come speak to Lunch with the Future. And I'm like, okay, I'll come speak to Lunch with the Future. It was great. And, I try to participate every way I can ever since. And, kind of makes me think about, okay, so with our project, since you brought up, speaking about people, places, and events, we're thinking about our project that we've been working on as part of the subcommittee for the parade as a whole, the historical subcommittee. And we've been working on, really collecting a lot of information and transforming it from just a picture with some text into some story that makes sense for people as they go to watch it. And so one of the things I said I was committing to do, because I've been really focused in a lot with this work and all this information, there's a wealth of information that I seem to have acquired during the time in this process, giving it to somebody else, telling it at random times and random places, like, oh, did you know that used to be hey, did you know that was the Green Buck back then? And did you know that Fair Oaks and Lincoln actually met at one point? And it took me a while to grasp that concept, but now that I got it, I have to share it. So that's one of the things I committed to doing to make sure that we're, kind of passing along that baton. But since we're on the topic of our documentary a bit, Gary, maybe you can talk. I guess I could talk about it, but, I don't always have to be in the front. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the effort that, we've been really putting together regarding that over the last couple of years, because it isn't just a point in time, 1 year kind of experience. It's now making a little bit of a life of its own.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm just one person, because I'll tell you, Michael Mims has been a wealth of information. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
He's part of the iconic Mims family. Dr. Aisha Randall has also been upfront, and Al Heyman has also Dale Yarborough. But the most important thing is that we've been able to gather so much information that this is seems to look like it might be an ongoing process. When you look at, the effect that those that were here first, what they had and what they worked with, and been able to make something out of that. When you look at Mr. Woods was a shoe shine man that went to an old white mortuary establishment to learn his skill, and how Arzella and Fred and his brother Cliff picked it up and turned it into one of the most prolific black or any type of mortuary in the area. And you look at, just the areas of where we lived, how we've been able to create a value in our community, create value in our people, and also and become some have become very wealthy,
Right.
right here in town, and our real estate developers and that started out, as a sort of like a mom and pop shop. Bercy Mae Richardson, Esther Jones,
Yes.
and the Bartletts are those that led the way. This documentary gives an insight to some of the things that we just may not know. The unsung heroes. We just lost a big time hero in Dolores Hickenbottom. Okay, and you look at
Right.
the effect that she had, her husband LB, and the fact that the Pasadena Unified School District's Board of Education boardroom is named after LB. But a lot of folks would not put that in front and center. You look at we spend a lot of time on the Robinson brothers, and we should. But there was a guy that was just as prolific, just didn't get the fame that they did, and that's James Stocks. Okay,
Right.
when you look at Mildred Singleton, who was a gold medalist in the Olympics, and right there with Wilma Rudolph. And you look at our music and our entertainers, when we talk about Arthur Duncan, who tap danced on the was it Lawrence Welk?
Lawrence Welk Show.
Lawrence Welk Show for 40 something years. And you just see, I mean, scientists, we can even talk to our scientists, Lee
Yeah.
Brown, professor of chemistry at Caltech, Joe Barnes, professor of chemistry and the head basketball coach at Pasadena City College, and some of the people that were nurturing our children from elementary school all the way through high school. Francis Guillory, Jeff Lynn Johnson, Mr. Keller, Mrs.
Flossie
Jackson.
Duncan. Yeah, there's so many.
Yes, yeah.
There's so many. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can just take a look at that. When you see it, hopefully we might be able to, I would say if we could, lend it to the libraries and the high schools and let them have an assembly or whatever and show these documentaries to these folks or our young folks, in the schools, so they get to see as a captured audience, some of the things that have gone on throughout the years and the things that are going to go.
Right.
And offer an incentive for them to continue.
That's right. Yeah. So Kenny, maybe you could speak a little bit about what was some of the inspiration around, this committee going off to do something similar in this way. I know you didn't say, hey, go make a video, go produce this and that, like you guys can, kind of put things together. But what was some of the inspiration behind some of what the committee was intending to do, what you had intended the committee to do?
Well, it was really to, one, definitely showcase the history of Pasadena and never forget it, and to inspire the community as to what we have done and what we can do in the future. So those are really probably the two biggest things. One is the history of what we've done, but hopefully to be able to take that and to continue to inspire us as a people to continue to move forward and do things.
Yeah.
Awesome. I know that we've been doing so much work in the last 2 years of really compiling so much data. And we really just can't get it all done in a message about a time. It's so massive in that way. So, we've been discussing, doing other micro documentaries of people, making sure that we're able to share their flowers around their experiences within Pasadena. And we've been calling it affectionately Pasadena Unsung.
Yes.
And having those discussions with people to, really capture our history in a video kind of context so that we can, preserve it and make sure that those stories continue to live forward in that context. As we're moving forward into organizing for our 40th on some level, I know we discussed it a bit as a committee around really doing a big 40th celebration during a time when we can actually have a parade and festival as we felt traditionally that we typically do. That's still on the horizon a little bit, Kenny?
Yeah, that is. We are definitely looking to plan for our 40th. So technically, even though there's been 40 years, we technically have not had the 40th parade and festival.
Yeah.
So the hope and goal is that we will have that next year, and we will do it bigger and better. So that is our plan going forward, that we will do the parade and festival, and wanting everyone to come out and be a part and be able to support that. But one of the other things that we're going to do leading up to this, Juneteenth is something that we celebrate in Pasadena as well. So the committee is looking to do, something bigger and better for that. We've always kind of done it on a smaller scale. So we're going to look to do a festival at Robinson Park. We have a tentative date of June 18th that we're working on. The committee will be meeting next week to kind of discuss some of the details of what that would look like. But we are definitely moving forward with that celebration, but then also the 40th anniversary, and we want the support of the entire community to come out and be a part of that. And then also, if there's anyone out there that wants to be a part of the committee, please reach out to one of us, either myself, Pixie, or Gary, and provide your information so that we can pull you in and be able to utilize your resources as well as we look to do it bigger and better for Pasadena.
Right.
Amen.
This is awesome. You all have been so wonderful about getting this information out. And just as a reminder, we still have our film event down at the Rose Bowl on the 26th from 5 to 9. Did I hear you say?
Yes.
5 to 9. And I don't think you mentioned it, but this year the community got to vote on the movie that was selected. And even though, I'm going to mention it, even though The Wiz and The Last Dragon didn't get selected, because those would have been my choices, but that's okay. It can't always be about me. What movie did get picked?
Black Panther.
Black Panther. I told you, Pixie.
That was the movie that everybody wanted to see.
I was really rooting for Kirkland, though.
It's superhero time, but he's our superhero.
He is our superhero, definitely.
Yes.
So I just want to say, thank you both for, all three of us really, for participating in this conversation today. It's a very important discussion. This is not a solo kind of moment in time. We will continue to have this discussion moving forward. Even if we have to take it decade by decade, we're going to have the conversation about Pasadena Black history moving forward and unifying our community in certain ways that make sense for us all. And I do want to just thank you both for taking time out to, hang out with me for a little bit today. I appreciate Arroyo Live for letting me take over the airwaves just for a moment. I'm gonna give it back. You'll have it back in just a second. And I really do appreciate everyone taking their time. Again, this is Pixie Boyden for Arroyo Live, and I appreciate your time. Happy Black History Month, everyone.
Right. Thank you, Pixie.
All right, thank you, Pixie. Great job.
Thank you so much.
This program was brought to you by AJ Longo and Associates.